Listen up, sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
All right, folks, here we are on a Friday the 13th. A little spooky here today, but it's Friday. We love it. End of the week. We got a stacked show here for you on the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us part of your day. Chase is going to be joining us here in a couple of minutes, but we got another stacked show for you here. Former Collegiate defensive tackle and also covering NC State Wolfpack is joining us, Kenton Gibbs. Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech to be talking about them Red Raiders. And then, of course, Brian Smith, best for last, to talk about the transfer portal and Florida State. It's all collegiate, all from here on in, here on a Friday. So I am excited of it here on tonight's show. But, man, we had an action-packed game last night when it came to Edmonton and Florida. Well, here's the deal about this one. Florida, it was a tale of periods because in the end, the first period you just saw, Florida was just wiping the floor of Edmonton. But the biggest thing about this is Edmonton was not out for the count. They eventually came back in that game, and they tied things up, and then they forced an overtime, where then Leon Draisaitl, as you know, scores the game-winning goal to tie the series up at 2 apiece. This is what's incredible about the Stanley Cup, and a lot of people don't realize how hard it is to win some of these championship trophies. We're so used to the Super Bowl or the NBA Finals or even, the World Series. But when you're a hockey fan and you watch the Stanley Cup playoffs, you're getting beaten, you're getting battered, and you're taking shots after shots, and you're beaten and bruised up, but it's all worth it in the end when you win the cup because you get a chance to toast to a long season and get a chance to take the drink, and it's so worth it. Over 80 games a season. But we know, like we said about Edmonton, and for the entire country of Canada, because they haven't won a Stanley Cup in over 30 years. So Edmonton is on the spot. But this is kind of interesting of how this series has gone on, but I expected this to be just like a heavyweight fight, where both of them were highly talented up on offense. Goaltending is a big thing. The question mark, of course, was why Edmonton ended up pulling up the goalie pretty early, and then all of a sudden they overcame adversity, tied the game up, and eventually won it. So that's the big thing. So to me, Edmonton is doing everything that they possibly can to stay in this game. They are. And you just saw that display last night. If Connor McDavid is not up and on his A game, that's where Leon Draisaitl is going to jump in, and he's going to end up taking control. So it's a big deal for Edmonton, and it's a big deal for the entire country of Canada. And they're relying on them. And this is how big it is. It doesn't matter where you are. Calgary, Winnipeg, Montreal. You've got a bunch of rivalries all around in that entire country. But overall, you're all on the same plateau. You want to bring the cup back to a country that has basically 24/7. It's all hockey. You got snow, you got ice. It's beautiful there. I have yet to make a travel plan to go out to Toronto and multiple other places. But we know Edmonton, it's all down the line from here. But Florida's been very impressive all throughout it. This is why you can't count them out with their offense. Tied series, exciting, but it's kind of been nerve-wracking more than anything else. But Edmonton, they snuck away with it last night, tied the series, and now it's all or nothing for both teams. But like I said, Florida's looking for back-to-back, and Edmonton is looking to get the job done and bring the cup back to a beautiful country of Canada. All right, well, we're going to start off our first guest up from here. So Texas Tech, they got an interesting year this year. We've been talking a lot about college football, and it's been exciting in the last couple of days. So to join us and talk a little more about the Texas Tech Red Raiders, here's Chris Level from Locked On Texas Tech. I've been saying this all the last couple of days, and it's already going to be 2 weeks straight. I cannot wait for the college football season to start anytime soon because it's an open playing field now. With the adjustment of the college football playoffs, where all 12 teams, you now will have the 4 best. So conference bid is not going to matter from here. And then the 5 through 12, they're going to have to fight tooth and nail to get into the big show of the national championship. But there are some teams that we know outside looking in that didn't get into the playoffs last year are having high expectations of, hey, we want to end up getting in there and we want to show our stuff and show our program that we too belong in the big dance. How do you expect this college football season to really kind of go about? And even with the expectation that could be looming around the corner for Texas Tech.
Yeah, Jake, thanks for having me on. Obviously the Red Raiders are in the Big 12 conference, and it's wide open. I mean, look no further than last year when Arizona State was picked to finish dead last, and they won the thing and almost won a playoff game. Go figure. That's sports. I think Texas Tech is absolutely a contender in the Big 12, and if you make it to Arlington, I think, you obviously have a chance to make it into the playoff. You asked me about the college football season. It's fascinating because in the last, I feel like 2 months, we've talked about house case. We've talked about portal. We've talked about playoff format, which league likes this format, who's mad at this league, expansion going on in the Pac-12. And you mentioned like the season coming up, and that's the fun part. That's the part that we all love so much about all this stuff. And I guess May, June, July is all reserved for all the shenanigans that go on in this lovely sport that we call college football. But that's just the reality of it. So it's good to be talking ball is the main thing. But yeah, man, I think as you ask about the team that I've covered for 20 plus years. I mean, they're going to be either a fringe top 25 team or a top 20 team or top 15 team. It just depends on where you look. It's all in the eye of the beholder, and spend a lot of money trying to put a team together. And I think that they feel like they've put their best foot forward, but again, it guarantees you nothing. You have to now go earn it, and we'll see what's around the corner come the fall.
So it was interesting because I did have a couple of previous guests that were on here that were also in the Big 12 covering a couple teams like Kansas State and such. What we saw from Arizona State, I mean, ultimately it was a very impressive season for them nonetheless and going toe-to-toe against Texas. But one thing for sure was there was a lot of shakeups in this conference last year. I mean, you had Kansas out of nowhere just come in and try to play spoiler against Colorado and several others that were up there. Now they're walking in like, hey, we finished off on a big note. We want to go even further than what last year gave us at the start. So there's a lot of expectations, at least in this conference, but to really truthfully outlook this, I mean, Texas Tech, what's kind of the game plan from here? Because you got a couple teams there that are ready for, the trench game where it's ground and pound, tough defenses, but then also some dynamic offensive playmakers up from here. And that's kind of something Texas Tech, they really want to be prepared for, to especially competing within their conference, right?
Yeah, the fascinating thing about where Texas Tech was in the league last year is that the two teams that played for the Big 12 championship in Arlington were Iowa State and Arizona State, and you beat both of them. And had one more conference win, you let one get away in Fort Worth against TCU. You did not have a good game against Baylor at home. And then Colorado, there was some calls there, but you just didn't have enough. Colorado was just better than you were. And had you gotten one of those games, you would have been playing in Arlington. The margins are just they're razor thin. And so the game plan, the question that you ask, I think, and you mentioned the word trenches, when they hit the portal in December, I think that's exactly why they felt they did not make it to Arlington, is because they weren't good enough up front on either side of the ball. And that's why these SEC teams are so much better than everybody. Typically, it's they have better big people and more of them than the next guy. And so they went and added, I think, of their 21 portal additions, I think 10 of those are linemen. 3 new starters on the offensive line, 4 new starters on the defensive line, and some depth pieces to go with it. And these aren't. Let's just spin the wheel and take a chance on a kid that was highly recruited that hadn't been playing somewhere. These are all kids that have absolutely played and have been all conference guys, or whatever the case may be. They've got plenty on tape to evaluate at the college game, and so that's why. But in the Big 12. You could sit here and tell me Kansas State. You could tell me Iowa State. You could certainly tell me Arizona State, which, in my opinion, that should be the favorite until somebody knocks them off with as much as they have coming back, even trying to replace Cam Scatteraboo. I think there's plenty of Baylor support out there. BYU had a really good season. They bring a lot back. There's some question marks around their quarterback right now. We'll see kind of what happens there, but spin the wheel on who should be the favorite. There is no-brainer favorite, although Arizona State's as close as you're going to come to that because they won it last year. But it's a league that, you're right, it's very competitive. The margins are razor thin, and it's going to be a 1-game difference depending on who makes it into the title game or not. And that's, as we talk about playoff format and all those things, I really wish, I don't know, I'm probably wishing for stuff that we're just not going to get, but I really wish that every league played 9 conference games instead of 8. I think it's just different. You look at the tiebreakers and all the jumbled up standings in like the ACC or the SEC, where if you just played one more conference game, it would be a bit more sorted out. And maybe if Texas Tech would have played one less conference game last year, they would have been the ones playing in Arlington. Who knows? But yeah, game plan equals trenches. That's exactly what they wanted to add, and they did so.
I'll tell you what, though, and I think that was perfectly said, because I'm in the same agreement, because it's a difference maker, right? Because ultimately, the sport itself, like, I know with the NIL and the transfer portal, nothing's perfect, but at the same time, you want to get consistency. And at the same time, that's where programs with coaching, recruitment, and such, it's a consistent role. I still am on the fences that I believe we need to get a CEO in here to at least balance this, because it's a lot. New money, it's a new dynamic too, because everybody's trying to adjust to this. And I still am on the side that I believe, even with the transfer portal, you got to treat this like an NFL offseason. Okay, wrap up all the games, wrap up all the bowl games as well, because then the coaches and the players can be focused. All the rest of it, can figure itself out later, because then that's when, you're going to accumulate players, whether recruits or, within the transfer portal, depending on, how much money you spend. But at the same time, you just want to limit the distractions at the end of the day, because that's where the prime focus of the roster build and the competitiveness, even getting into the playoffs themselves, is what's really going to make a big factor.
Yeah, the sport is largely broken from the standpoint, and I think coaches agree with this, and that's why they're trying to get to one portal window instead of 2. Tech played Arkansas in their bowl game in Memphis, Tennessee, and it was, Arkansas's backups were better than Texas Tech's backups, is essentially what that game was, because so many players have opted out or they're in the portal or, what or they're going to go pro. And it's just a bit of a mess. But December, it's unfortunate because there's just way too many things happening at the exact same time. And this is why the general manager position exists. This is why you have, to your point about the NFL part of this, you have almost like a front office staff that is working on things while the coaches are doing, what they're supposed to be doing. And it's just, it makes December obviously not boring, but I think Texas Tech, when they fell just short of the title game, there was a lot of motivation. We're just right there. So because you're not in the playoff, you have plenty of extra time. And truth be told, you're worried about the bowl game, but not really worried about it. It's not like, hey, man, we're going to go put our best foot forward and all that. But they really put a lot of effort and time and money, most specifically, into trying to fix their roster via the portal. And they certainly did that in December. But you're right. It's the NFL aspect is certainly, because that's what these coaches want, is they want almost like the OTAs. I mean, I think that the traditional spring football is going to go away at some point, and you're going to kind of spread it out, push it closer to the summertime, give your team more of an offseason. And this is all right out of the NFL. I mean, that's exactly, where a lot of this is coming from. I mean, Jim Nagy is the new general manager for the Oklahoma Sooners. And where did he cut his teeth? I mean, obviously Senior Bowl stuff, but it was, so there's so many things about the NFL that is spilling over into college football, and some have a problem with it, others don't. I've just kind of gotten to the point where you kind of have to embrace it because it's a different sport than it was 5 years ago, heck, even 2 years ago.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I like I said, I think a lot of teams and a lot of even fans are just adjusting to the new norm up from here, with college football. But again, I've always been a big fan. I love, it's just so tribal in college football, unlike the NFL, because, I mean, you go to college. I live in Colorado, so I could go down to Boulder or I could go down to Fort Collins, and I could go to these college towns and just know that every Saturday it's going to be like all or nothing for them in the tailgate from the start to finish. It's just such a great atmosphere. But one quick question before transitioning. Man, I'm excited to see what Taj Brooks is going to bring to the table, because watching him last season, 1,500 yards, 17 scores, the kid was just, he was such a high prospect, and so I'm excited to see some, what his future will look like. But we know Texas Tech, they're going to need to really revamp up on that run game and the running backs by committee. Is there kind of a guy you've seen that can step in that role and really kind of take it by storm to help out the run game?
Yeah, Taj, hopefully he makes some noise up in Cincinnati this next year. He was a late round draft pick, phenomenal young man. Workhorse, picks up the blitz, gets the tough yards, all the things, right? And they leaned on him a bunch last year, and it is average to poor as their offensive line was last year. It's shocking that he still had 1,500 yards, and that's a credit to play calling and scheming up front and all those things. What is interesting around here is that there's a lot of expectations for your program this year, but you had to replace two coordinators. One of which it was your decision. You moved on from Tim DeRuyter on defense, but Zach Kittley, who coached the offense here in Joey McGuire's tenure, he moved on to go be the head coach at Florida Atlantic. So you've got a new offensive coordinator that came in here from Texas State named Mac Leftwich, and so the scheme is going to be a bit different. I think there's some air raid, which is like the Mike Leach terminology. There's also some of the Art Briles principles in what Mac wants to run. And so it's interesting as you look at, okay, well, how does the running back fit in to the equation? To answer your question, I think the young man that they brought in from the portal that was at USC last year named Quentin Joyner averaged 7 yards a carry. He was the backup there. He's originally from Houston, wanted to get back closer to home. I think he's probably as close to your every down back as you're going to get, but it will be by committee. They had two freshmen behind Taj last year that I think they're very excited about. I don't know if either one of them is ready to be like a 25 carry a game guy or anything. And I don't know if we know enough yet of what this offense is going to be to know if that's exactly what he wants either, talking about Coach Leftwich. So there's a lot of – and it's tricky. You have expectations and you spend a lot of money on your roster and you have really good players and you have really good depth. But you have a couple of new schemes here, and sometimes it takes some time. I don't know how to compute all of that just yet, and what that will look like on how long it will take. But you have a veteran quarterback back, and on most of the players you brought in, they are older, matured, and all those things. But Quentin Joyner would be the answer to your question. I just don't know exactly what that looks like yet. But right now, I think they would tell you that it'll be running back by committee, and he would be the in charge of said committee.
So transitioning to Texas Tech basketball. So what a year they had. I mean, getting into the Elite Eight. And I thought they were definitely one of those teams, like just sneaky ones, that that they were playing really good perimeter defense. And at the same time, getting the shots and controlling the clock. So to me, ending off of the year that they did, and unfortunately coming up short against Florida, we know that, the transfer portal was definitely one thing that kind of hit a bunch of teams. But, however, Texas Tech, I'm assuming, especially with how long you've covered them, they're not completely worried. But it is something that they have to prepare for going into next season, because ending a year like they did last year, I mean, they want to get much closer than what it gave them. So kind of outlooking, in basketball, because we know that, with this transfer portal, especially with where it's looking with the NIL money, where players are going to start coming back because the money now is starting to grow. And plus two, players, I believe, are getting much more mature when you get 2 or an extra year in college to be prepared for the NBA. But I believe Texas Tech, with what they ended, they're going to be my team still that I would not even be sleeping on. This is going to be a team that they've really established well, and they want to get closer, maybe even potentially an appearance into the Final Four. How would you have outlooked last season? And now what's the motivation going into next year coming back into the tournament?
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to do the radio broadcasting for Tech football and basketball, and so I was on the road with that team well into March and nearly April with Tech basketball and Coach McCaslin. And oh man, you were just this close to being in a Final Four in your home state, which would have been crazy. Was fortunate enough to be with them when they went to the Final Four in 2019, and if they'd have fouled up 3 at the end of that game versus Virginia, they may have been national champions. But anyway, that's sports. As far as basketball, because of that run in like 17, 18, and 19, that sweet spot when Chris Beard was here, basketball has just become wildly popular here. I mean, you have a 15,000-seat arena. Season tickets are sold out. It's just a hot ticket. And they have stayed competitive. When Grant came in, everybody knew he'd be a really good fit. You just weren't sure, okay, what's the ceiling here? And he went to the NCAA tournament in his first year. And then last year, I don't know if I knew how good they would be. I knew they would be relevant in the conference race, but I don't know if anybody saw this coming, like how good they were. They were elite. They were analytically strong across the board. They shot the ball extremely well. I mean, there was multiple games in the Big 12 conference where you had 7 different players make a 3-point shot. I mean, that is ridiculously balanced. And they weren't great on defense at the start, but that's Grant's specialty, and they got better and better. And so as you go through the NCAA tournament, I thought they had some good matchups. They just lost to a team that was really, really good, and I ultimately won the whole thing, and they had them dead to rights with about 2 or 3 minutes left and just couldn't quite seal it. Missed a few shots, and Florida made some crazy shots. And as Grant would say, hey, man, you got to make them miss them. But so as that ended, it quickly transitions because like we were talking about with football, the portal is already open. You're trying to figure out, okay, and you have no time to decompress and rest. It's like, okay, what are we putting together for next year? The main piece, he was the Big 12 Player of the Year last year in JT Toppin, and they got him back. They paid him a bag of cash and got him to come back. He's kind of a tweener that I don't know. He's a 6'7" post player, but boy, is he really good.
Yeah.
And I think he's really smart to take as much money in college as he can, because I don't know what the NBA situation is going to look like for him. But you're building around him, and you have a head start when you get the Big 12 Player of the Year to come back. But they'll be a preseason top 10 team. They were very active in the portal. They got a lot of their pieces of the roster back, added some high-profile pieces from the portal, but they'll be a preseason top 10 team, and they're extremely well coached. They're going to play Duke. They're going to play Illinois at Illinois. They have a home-and-home with Houston. They have a home-and-home with BYU in the conference situation. So it'll be a very relevant, nationally relevant, I think, basketball season around here again. And the expectations would be to contend for the Big 12 championship and then make it to the Final Four if you can.
Yeah, I mean, man, JT Toppin, when I watched a couple games, especially through, the tournament, man, he was something special. And you're right. I love, and I would explain it the same way. He's the tweener. Because especially, scoring over 18 points a game, and he's somebody that creating those lanes and then finding the shots and then just being defensive as well, to where he's putting in his cut, and so guys that are going to lead by example and follow along with it, that's going to make a huge difference, and especially for any player and in any program as well that you're building around, which is interesting. My final question before moving on is, we know that the transfer portal, the NIL, it's really shaping up a lot of college sports, not just football, but even in basketball as well. Because to me, I watch the NBA as well, but to me, it's like I had a hard time really paying attention to the NBA because it's vastly changing. Adam Silver's trying to create parity in the league, but to me, it's like, well, if you ain't got the Lakers, the Celtics, the Warriors, up and on television, and especially with how big the money markets are, then your viewership is just going to basically take a plummet. But to me, with college basketball, if I get to know these players, right, and I see their growth within the program, I would then be able to know those players when they come into the draft. So we know the NBA draft is right up and around the corner. So when you're thinking of futures and then coming into the pros, my big thing is I always wish the best of successes for some of these players. But I think taking that extra year or even another year, like 2 years total, coming into college basketball makes a big difference to make a big impact into the NBA, because we know this watching the NFL. These guys get drafted and they are day one starters or they're big contributors into a 53-man roster. But it's like in the NBA, I got to wait 3-4 years for this puppy to cook until I really get to see the best of them. So how would you best explain it, especially with the relationship between college basketball and the NBA?
Yeah, and JT's a great example, because I think in years past, if the NIL is a lot of things, and some schools have really jumped, with both feet in, like Texas Tech has. Others have kind of flirted with it. If anything, it's been good for a lot of players and families out there. Okay. But I think in generally speaking, with what you're saying, in many ways, it's better for the sport. And what I mean by that is it keeps some of the better players there. And we get to selfishly, as a sports fan or a college basketball fan or college football fan, you get to watch some of these guys a bit longer. They don't feel the pressure to have to, leave. And Taj Brooks did the same thing. But Taj Brooks could have gone a year ago and wanted to spend one more year here, and Texas Tech made it worth his while. And so everybody wins. But I think sometimes you need a little seasoning, and sometimes guys aren't they're just not NBA players. Maybe they're professional players. Maybe it's overseas, but the NBA is the trickiest one of them all, because if you're not a first round draft pick, the money's not guaranteed. You could be the first pick in the second round, and if you don't make the team, or you end up on a 2-way contract, or there's just nothing guaranteed, or I got a bird in the hand, and my school here is going to feed me. I'm going to play at a high level. I'm going to wear great gear, whatever. Be coached well. get to sign autographs with my buddies and just kind of live the life, big man on campus type thing. And I get paid really handsomely to do it. Not a bad gig. Because sometimes these guys get to and the measurables just aren't there. It's like, man, you just don't, this isn't what we're looking for, or, you're a fringe NBA guy. So from that standpoint, I love the NIL has allowed kids to look for reasons to stay in college for longer and not have to be forced to make the decision to go overseas or chance it and go to the pro or stay in the G League for whatever, and then you wash out in 2 or 3 years. So that's been the good part about NIL from what I can see. And like, in the Big 12, AJ DeBansa, he's going to be arguably the top pick in the draft next year. He's going to go to BYU for a lot of money, but it's great that he's going to, be in the Big 12 for a year, and he's going to play Texas Tech twice. And I just think that's exciting for the sport.
Yeah, no, I think it's exciting, and I think it's a good thing as well, because I want to be able to, get to know these players, build the relationship, and then be prepared for when they get into the big stage of the NBA. But yeah, I think it's a good thing. Give this puppy a couple more years to really kind of cook it up, and I think we will see a lot of really vast impacts when these players start to hit the NBA really, really soon. Chris, appreciate you for coming on by and to tap in with all of our audiences here where people can get locked in on the Red Raiders all season long.
Yeah, well, I'm fortunate enough to do I did sports radio in Lubbock for about 17 years and gave that up about 3 or 4 years ago, and then started doing this podcast with this network, Locked On Texas Tech, but it's the Locked On Network, and I do that 5 days a week with another radio compadre of mine here in Lubbock named Casey Cowan, and we just cover Texas Tech 5 days a week. And if you're listening to a Texas Tech sporting event, whether it's football or basketball, I'll be on the air there as well. But Jake, you were very kind to have me on. I enjoyed talking sports with you, and keep hope alive on a Friday night, my man. Enjoy it. Football season not too far away.
I love it, man. Absolutely. A side note for you, because speaking of radio broadcast, that's definitely the click and the shtick I'm trying to go for, and even broadcasting. So this has been a well-running show for 6 years plus running, and continuing to get the best guests up out here. So that way they don't just hear me rambling on about my own opinions. I got great guests that come up on here, but appreciate you, man. Enjoy the Friday night and the weekend, and we will see you soon. And good luck to the season up and coming for Red Raiders football, man. Take care.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Jake.
Absolutely. Well, moving on forward, and we are passing the ball along and going up and down to NC State. And a former player who knows a thing or two when it comes to the defensive sets and getting locked on NC State and the Wolfpack this upcoming season. Ken Gibbs joins the show. Moving on from the Big 12 and coming up and into the ACC. I mean, this is an interesting conference this year. I mean, the guarantee this year is we know what Clemson football obviously looks like. But the other thing is, my biggest dark horse would obviously be Georgia Tech, because that defensive front they got and adding in more from the transfer portal is going to be really interesting this season. But looking at NC State, I mean, they got to really prepare up defensively, offensively. How do you really outlook, what kind of the competition going in this upcoming season that the Wolfpack, they really want to be prepared for this year?
Yeah, so if I'm talking about NC State's outlook for the year and saying what I expect them to be, the biggest question is, can you get stops? Can you get stops? That's going to be the question. Offensively, you have C.J. Bailey returning at quarterback, who was forced to step into a situation where last year he was supposed to be young pup, go ahead and redshirt. Grayson McCall is the guy that he's going to be a 6-year senior. He's going, it's his time. He's former Conference Player of the Year, multiple time Conference Player of the Year at the Sun Belt, at Coastal. Go ahead and learn. All of a sudden, we got a kid that was slow dancing at prime a few months earlier as our starting quarterback because of Grayson McCall's concussion injuries and all that good stuff. So it was very unfortunate, but him going through that trial by fire, it definitely forced him to hone in and tune into certain things that he would not have otherwise. And the beauty of it, the offensive line and the run game were good enough last year to where a thing that happens a lot with freshmen, if they come into an unstable and terrible situation in general, it speeds up their clock. They learn bad habits. They learn, oh, God, I got to get rid of the ball right now. I don't know. I can't go through my reads. I can't. CJ Bailey, from a very young age, showed the wonderful ability to go ahead and go through all his reads. Where's one? Where's two? Where's three? All right, I may need to run. I may need to throw this away. So he was given the time to do that. And he has a receiving core that many people would say on the outside, on paper, if you do not know this team, you say, oh, losing KC, that group of pass catchers is going to be way different. KC being Kevin Concepcion, who's now a Texas Tech or Texas A&M Aggie, rather. A lot of people say this group is worse. You're bringing back Justin Jolie, the best-kept secret in all of college football at tight end. I think he's one of the best tight ends in the nation. I think he's going to be a Mackey Award finalist. You're bringing him back. You're bringing back Noah Rogers, a former borderline five-star guy that showed up in some massive moments last year. Look up his catch against the University of North Carolina. I call him a dirty foot club. So just for posterity, if you hear me say that for the rest of the episode, that's what I'm talking about. But look up his catch against them, and you'll see the type of playmaking that he had. Keenan Jackson, Terrell Anderson, and Jonathan Taylor. You've got talent all there. And I haven't even mentioned the running game with a guy like Hollywood Smothers, who was dynamic. He was as electric of a running back as NC State has had in some time. You're bringing all of that nucleus back. You're bringing Jacarius Peak, who's one of the best offensive linemen in the conference that didn't get any of the conference mentions and all that good stuff back. Defensively, I am a little concerned. Guys are coming along. From what I'm hearing, guys in the program are coming along at the rate that they should, but I'm always worried about guys that haven't seen real live game time. They haven't seen. It's easy to diagnose a star route in a film room. It's easy to diagnose a levels concept in a film room. It's different when you're on the field and you're having to play against it and prevent it. It's different when you got Brian Wesco lined up across from you. It's way different when you're seeing Kevin Jennings kind of break what's on your what's drawn up on the board. So I'm very intrigued to see how this defense holds up. But you just had a Big 12 guy on here. NC State's going to have to play some 2010s Big 12 football. It's going to be a race to 50 some games. And damn it, I hope we get there first.
And, it's interesting because, I try to tell a lot of people because especially, you look at conferences like we know the two biggest ones, SEC and Big 10, they're the most competitive. And you'll mix into Big 12. And then a lot of people kind of look at ACC a little bit differently. But at the same time, Clemson and Dabo Swinney, he wants to get, he's gotten into the playoffs. But at the same time, we know that his program, took a bit of a drop off. But once he finally got Cade Klubnik, it kind of changed up a little bit. And now there's expectations there. But we know the ACC, it's going to be interesting to see what the next couple of years will look like for them because, like I said, I think that the defensive front of Georgia Tech is really starting to upgrade it, and it's getting bigger and better. But even for the other teams, when you look at Florida State, you look at a couple of other programs up from there, NC State, they want their fair share, and they want their cuts up from it. And like you explained about defense and even playing the position itself, what are kind of some outlooks, especially from play-wise? Scheme fits, players, you would expect this guy's going to be our heavy-duty tackler. This one is going to be more of that run stopper. There's a couple names up out there that I would expect NC State, they really want to see the best of production out of them and give them that fighting chance to climb up in the ranks in the ACC.
Yeah, well, football and baseball have one thing in common. You want to be strong up the middle. And NC State has the ability to do that at the front level with a guy like Brandon Cleveland anchoring the middle of that defense. He's a guy that I see as more of a three-tech than a nose guard, but I think he can play both. I think he can do both at a high level. I think he's going to have to be disruptive in terms of squeezing and condensing the pocket because I'm a little bit concerned about our edge rushers. And that is what, to me, the edge rushing ability is what concerns me about this defense the most because at the end of the day, I think every good team has at least 1 to 2 in terms of good defense. You have at least 1 to 2. The best defenses, they got 3 to 6. They have multiple. They come at you in waves, change like hockey lines. Giving credit to the Tennessee Volunteers of last year. I saw it up close and personal at the Duke's Mayo Kickoff Classic in Charlotte when NC State played them. And it was like, yes, James Pierce was going to be the guy that wasn't going to have to wait in the green room long. but they had waves of defensive linemen that could do it at a high level. I'm a little bit worried about that, but you're going to need to see very high level production from Brandon Cleveland when he's on the field, if that defense is to be anything special. And then in terms of your tacklers, the linebacking core is in a similar situation where they were last year, in that I believe that they're good in terms of top end talent, but you're still one injury away from things being not so good, right? Last year I said, hey, this linebacking core, Tony Gibson's going to have to make some chicken salad out of, with all due respect to those young men, some guys that weren't as talented as what we've seen at the linebacker position at NC State. And this year, I think it's going to be the same thing. Sean Brown, fantastic linebacker. He can roam all over the place. You can tell that he used to be a safety by how he moves around the field. He can get it done. He's one of the few guys that hash to hash is an understatement for him. He literally is a sideline to sideline guy. Then you got Caden Fordham. Guy that's coming off injury. He was the starting Mike linebacker last year. He was doing good things until his ACL tear. So you're wondering how he's going to look coming off that. Elijah Groves is a little bit of the wild card here, because he is the guy he's the freak of the group. There's always one player that you look at, their measurables, and you watch their high school film and you're like, oh, that kid's a freakazoid. That's Elijah Groves. At this point in time, with a year under head strength conditioning coach Antonio Burnett's weightlifting system and all that, and with college nutrition and all that good stuff, his body is filling out. Now it's, can you move that body? Can you be where you're supposed to be? Because I think that if Elijah Groves is good, that's why I say he's the wild card. Not only from a talent standpoint, he has the ability to elevate this defense if he is mentally prepared to take the next step. That's going to be difficult. Now that DJ Elliott is the new defensive coordinator, as opposed to Tony Gibson, who had been there the past couple of years, who's now the head coach over at Marshall. But I see that as that linebacking core and those tacklers, those are going to be the main guys. And once again, I'm looking at a situation where you brought in a bunch of good guys from the portal with Kenny Soares and company in that realm, but you also lost a ton in the portal in terms of depth guys in that linebacker room. So you're really looking at an outlook for that group, that front seven in particular, where you're saying to yourself, there are some holes, even if everybody's healthy, but you cannot afford an injury or two at some critical spots there.
So a couple days ago, I asked this fun question, and I actually had your colleague up and on here, and he would be ecstatic if this was to happen. But a fellow NC State alumni, Philip Rivers, we know his kid Gunner. I mean, he looks great. The kid's got a bigger body, and I also honestly think that, like, from a talent trajectory, I think he's got a much higher ceiling than what his dad has had. But I think he's been around really good coaches, and he's also been around great camps. We know Texas has been eyeballing him, but we know NC State, they want to throw some crumbs in there. They want to make it very spicy and want to bring in a fellow, recruit at some point that also, knowing his dad, like NC State, man, wouldn't that be the perfect, match made in heaven right from there? How would you feel personally if that were the case, that Gunner Rivers following into the footsteps of his dad and yet being an even higher prospect, at the quarterback position and really kind of transcending, the NC State program and even on the offensive side of the ball?
I see it like this. Gunner Rivers coming to NC State would be absolutely massive, because this is a legacy guy. This is a guy, his dad's name littered all throughout our record books, all throughout the ACC record books, to be honest. To get an NC State Legends child in here, and don't get me wrong, right? He is phenomenal, but Phillip Rivers and all those kids, you're going to have at least, 3-4 more shots at getting you one of those River boys in here. No, but in all seriousness, Gunner is a special, special talent. He's much more mobile than his dad was. I can tell you that much right now. His dad was a little bit of a statue back there, but he could get it done. He could absolutely fling it. And his son is the same way, just with a little less wonky of a release. And he, like you said, he's been around coaches. He is NFL pedigree. It's there. You can tell he's grown up around the game because he kind of reads the game out in a way that is advanced for his age. So getting a guy like Gunner Rivers to NC State, that would be a massive pickup. And regardless of what his name is, You always want to have very good players there. But when you talk about the legacy aspect of it, I mean, how great would that be? Imagine all the TikTok edits with Stunning Like My Daddy with him and his pops, and you get the mirror images and all that going on. But, Gunnar Rivers is a big-time recruit, and at the end of the day, obviously, every NC State fan wants him. Every NC State alum wants him and all that good stuff. I am so intrigued and surprised because the quarterback position is one that for quite some time we have kind of punched above our weight class in, and it's just so fascinating. I mean, you go back to the days of probably, I'd say, Jacoby Brissett, and from there you had a string of very good quarterbacks with the brief interlude of the year where Devin Leary had his COVID problems. It was him and Bailey Hocking. But other than that, you have consistently had guys at that position that are not only capable, but can win you ball games at a high level. Even a year where NC State cycled through 4 quarterbacks, they won 8 games. That was no surprise. And it wasn't because of the offense. I'm not saying that year the quarterback play was great and outstanding, but everybody came in and did what they were supposed to do. So you get a guy like Gunnar and you elevate him like you've elevated some of these other guys who are much less talented, much lower of a ceiling than Gunnar. Oh, man, like you said, that is the type of thing that transcends a program. That's the type of thing that lifts you into that different type of weight class. And I always say, every great dynasty starts with one of 2 things, either a great player that stays home or a great player that comes home. Like they were born there, they have some tie to the university, and they come home or whatever the case may be. And that's what makes it great. You look at the state of North Carolina in general, there's a ton of talent here. It just doesn't stay in North Carolina. Dexter Lawrence goes to Clemson and does great things there. I believe Peter Woods is from Greensboro, if I'm not incorrect there. But you've got a ton of really, really high-level guys in the state of North Carolina. And then when you look up and you say, well, wait, where are they going for college? All of them have every college in the world you could imagine, except for the Dirty Foot Club or NC State or Wake Forest or Duke. And so, that's definitely a problem.
Yeah, it is interesting though, but yeah, I truthfully believe, just college football up and in general, man, it's going to get better and better. I think we ultimately need, more consistency, especially with new money coming in, the transfer portal, with the NIL in place. I mean, it's just a different plateau for, college sports, but I think it should be interesting. I mean, I love the tribal, kind of feeling with college sports in general, because it just buys you in. It draws you closer. And, especially in the state of North Carolina, I mean, now you got Chapel Hill ringing up with Bill Belichick, his first year in college, and, all the way across the board. So it should be really interesting coming up and into the season. But Kenton, appreciate you for coming on by and sharing the NC State insights from here and where people can find all of your guys' content as well, getting locked in for the Wolfpack the upcoming season.
Absolutely. You can find me and the Wolfpack and my coverage of the Wolfpack at LO_Wolfpack. I'm also the co-host of Locked On ACC. You can find that at Locked On ACC wherever you listen to your podcast and get all that type of good stuff. And please be aware, this name that you see down here in this bottom left-hand corner, TGI Kenton, if you go there, you're going to get Kenton the man, not Kenton the sports broadcaster. So you're going to see all types of stuff and opinions on different things and all that. And you're going to see me cheering for my Detroit sports teams, my AL leading Tigers and whatnot. You're going to see those types of things all over the page. So I appreciate you for having me on, Jake. And as always, go Pack, brother.
Absolutely, man. And hey, speaking of Detroit sports, because I do have a good fellow friend of mine that I'm waiting for him to get his name called back up to this organization. And I played high school baseball with him. He was a fellow teammate, but a great kid, great heart, great mind. Just waiting for him to get up and on this roster soon. But appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for coming on by. Enjoy the rest of the week and the weekend. And we will see you soon here for the upcoming college football season. Take care, my friend.
All righty, Chief. You too, man.
Yes, sir. All right, and the best for last. I love this one because ultimately we're getting the whole entire insight. The transfer portal, the NIL, the recruiting, and all within the state of Florida as well. But this is good. I'd love to see just with the whole plethora of it all, with college sports up in general. So to talk about it and all, locking onto the portal here and also with Florida State, Brian Smith joins us. great. We had two previous guests and, talking all of college sports, and so to me, I love it because it's very tribal. You go into college towns and people are invested. You could see it from the atmosphere every Saturday. And then even when you're up and in the court, you're in the arenas. So explaining a lot about the transfer portal because it is a big thing, right? And so to me, I've always looked at it as, number one, if you're not a guaranteed starter, you could be a guaranteed starter somewhere. Someone will obviously take you. And correct me if I'm wrong. In college sports, right, the player chooses you because of what you're investing in and what you see about it, and you're getting the best out the program. Whereas in the NFL, you kind of got to pick the player that really works in the system that you have. So looking at it into the portal, because we've watched it all, and we're going to break it down as well, because we've seen Carson Beck now go to Miami, Nico now going to UCLA. This is becoming a huge entire impact in college sports, and it's making it more and more interesting every single season, isn't it?
It is more interesting, but at the same time, it's not something that you're going to see go away, but at the same time, it's going to change some more with all the house litigation and all that stuff. It's crazy. I'm not a fan of all the stuff they're trying to do. There's going to be lawsuits coming, but that's the recruiting side of this.
Yeah.
The portal, though, gives some schools a chance, but otherwise, yeah, they weren't going anywhere. The depth at Alabama, LSU, Ohio State, etc., they can get picked on a little bit. Damon Wilson just left Georgia. He was a big-time sack guy. He goes to Missouri.
Yeah.
I did not see that coming, but I knew Damon in high school. He was from down in Florida. He benched 420, recruited by everybody. Didn't see him ending up at Missouri. Pre-portal, that never would have happened. So it's balanced the field a little bit. Look at Indiana. That staff took over. They bring 13 guys from their old school. It was something crazy. Look, I went to Indiana. They have always sucked at football. So they're terrible. They're all-time number one in losses at the P4 level. Not the stat you want to lead in, but they just went 11-1 in the regular season.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, right? And, look, Curt Cignetti, take aside from the fact of, he's just himself, right? And even Nick Saban even said it himself. He's like, I may have showed him a lot of things. I didn't show that part of him that, and going into the playoffs and just, seeing that toe-to-toe matchup in South Bend. But yeah, especially for, programs even like Indiana, because I've always known them to be a really good, well-respected basketball school. But then now we got football, and it's like things are kind of changing up. But, it's interesting because even, Miami, we know that they had arguably best prospect in the NFL, Cam Ward, go to Tennessee. Now they're starting the year off where they come in and bring in Carson Beck. And it may change the plethora of this offense. But to me personally, I don't know. It may be interesting because, again, suffering an injury, having to come back from an injury, spending another year in college, it's going to be a different change. How do you kind of outlook this on Carson Beck and what that offense may look like for the Hurricanes?
I know what it's like to have an elbow injury. It's not fun. Coming back from that, but then having 300-pound men want to run into you, I worry about him mentally. By the way, their first game, the Fighting Irish come down to South Florida. That will not be a friendly defense.
Yeah.
They're pretty nasty. I don't know how he recovers from that mentally game one. You want the Bethune-Cookman game, no offense to them, first. Miami's not going to admit that. But the schedule is the schedule. And kudos to him for coming back, putting his name out there saying, I'm better than this, where they're projecting me in the draft. I'm going to play another year. Okay. But the portal gave him a chance at a new opportunity. Miami needed a quarterback, so it's a win-win. For that situation, it's good. Most of the time, the portal, the kids go in because they think they're better than they should be. About half the kids don't end up anywhere. That's the problem with the portal. And there's a lot of bad actors telling kids to get in the portal. That's a whole nother discussion. Obviously, Carson Beck is an upper echelon player. He doesn't have to worry about that. And he reportedly, depending on who you believe, made a whole bunch of money to go down to Coral Gables. So I like that there's some of this because, again, we get more quick fixes and we get some of these weird stories like the Mensa kid went from Tulane to Duke for I don't know how many million. Who knew Duke was going to spend money on football?
Yeah.
So it's funny how it kind of just switches around.
Yeah.
It's more fun than it used to be because we kind of knew who everybody was going to win every year.
Right.
Not that way anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like it's leveling the playing field in itself because we're not seeing a whole lot of like, even with what the NBA, we're not seeing a bunch of super teams and dynasties. Everybody's trying to get their hands in the pot, right? They're trying to get the best players they got available in the transfer portal. They're obviously, like I've always said this, that shouldn't stop you as well from recruiting because you got to have a future. You got to have a bright future working on the positions that you want to be over the top at. I was speaking about this conversation, and I'd love your outlook up on this, but a few months ago, with the situation with Nico Imalov, I said it this way, is I think he had such a great future with Tennessee because they were building everything together for him where they got, more weapons. They got him, a team that they could go over the top after they just planted their mark in the college football playoff. Unfortunately, it didn't go the way it did, but he got a taste of it. And then all of a sudden he was seeking more money. And a lot of it was family. The camp was up and involved. And to me, it felt like he was just listening to a bunch of people. I personally am like, as a parent type of figure, I'm like, blaze your own trail. Because at the end of the day, I'm giving you the resources. I'm giving you at least the tools for you to go out there and blaze your own trail and, build your potential. So now he's in UCLA. And I'll be honest, Brian, I see this being a 4-win team. I just think with UCLA, they're going to be wildly overwhelmed. You're in the Big Ten. If you think the SEC was that much of competition, just wait till you get into the trenches with the Big Tens like your Michigans, your Ohio States, and all of them. He's going to get a taste of that. And I think, isn't that kind of a little bit of a reality check for Nico after this move?
Well, I think it's more of a reality check for the people around him. I had a chance to be around Nico during his recruitment a few times. Great guy. Everybody likes him. The camp around him, I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay. Nico's talent is insane. For those that don't know, as far as athleticism, he was the nation's #1 male volleyball recruit. #1. So he's a freak. He has the strongest arm I think I've ever seen at the high school level for a quarterback too, like ridiculous. So all the physical traits are there. UCLA's building a nice recruiting class, this, that, and the other, but they're miles from where Tennessee was, especially in the trenches, just like you were talking about. Could they win 6 or 7 games this year? It's possible, but they're just not a program ready to win right now. They're down the road. So I just hope he doesn't get beat up too much.
Yeah.
Because Tennessee's offensive line is on another level. Yeah, Tennessee still didn't have the weapons to win a national title this year necessarily, but what is he throwing to at UCLA? They did get the transfer from Cal, the running back, who's really, really good. I think he's an NFL player, but I don't know if they've got offensive weapons, tight end, receiver that are going to make it in their O-line. We'll see. So sometimes this can bite you. Be careful for what you ask for is an old saying, and I'm just going to use it now. But hopefully he has learned, regardless of what the people around him have done, finish it out at UCLA. You're still a millionaire. I mean, even if he never plays it down in the NFL, he never has to work again. Life is pretty good. So take those experiences and move on. And I imagine somebody in the NFL is going to try to put him at least on the practice squad if it doesn't work out great at UCLA down the road, because that arm is insane.
Oh, 100%. And there's even another opportunity where he could even enter his name back up and in the portal if things don't work out from there and really kind of build that potential up. Because I do see him as that dual threat quarterback where he's very highly talented and somebody's going to really unlock, the biggest potential to get him up and over the top and be a top 5, Heisman candidate at some point, So, even around the state of Florida, I mean, there are so much highly prospected and talented players, coming from it, whether it's, from the secondaries, the weaponries, running backs, and, lucky enough, you get a quarterback here or two. The state of Florida has done such a great job with just a lot of these kids out of high school and then going up into a lot of these big schools like around the SEC, or you're lucky enough, you get an over-the-top receiver to go into the Big Ten. So, seeing that and a lot of these recruiting classes, I mean, the state of Florida, it's just continuing to build a lot of these high talented prospects here and there to really impact and shape an offense or even a secondary, right?
Yeah, the state of Florida defensive backs, they're famous. The 2020 team that Bama had, their secondary was all from not just Florida, but from Broward County, where Fort Lauderdale is. All four. So that kind of puts things in perspective. Yeah, it's a loaded state for skill talent. There were more players from Florida in the NFL this past year, I think, than any other state. And they had more first-round picks or something like draft picks, something like that. It's ridiculous. And I've scouted there a long time. I recently moved to Alabama, but I just do a big loop all the time. Alabama, Georgia, Florida. That's where all the events are. So most of the scouts live down south like I do, and we go to these events. And you throw a rock, you hit a Division I player. So everybody wants to run track and play football. That's what it is. It's crazy.
Yeah. So my co-host of mine, he really was hoping to at least get, a scouter in up and onto the show. And luckily we were able to find one. So in your perspective, kind of like seeing from your eyes and in your mind, especially when it comes to scouting these players, are there some tangibles you see there? Like when you get, like, take for instance, like hypothetically, if you were to look at me and I'm a highly talented prospect out of high school, like whether it's a certain position or so, what are some of the key pointers from a scouter's perspective that you focus on and really kind of get your entire summary of what that kid's impact will be, even going into the collegiate level, and at some point have a brighter future and be prepared for that for the NFL level?
It's all about measurables. I know it's a really boring conversation, and parents get mad at me when I say this. Oh, what about the production? Well, I just go by what Kirby Smart and this guy, you've heard of him probably, Nick Saban, have said over and all. Speed, height, length, weight, developmental traits. They'll take the raw clay and they'll figure it out. God-given traits are the number one thing. So suddenness, the ability to change direction, especially laterally, those are the things we look for, like the Under Armour camps. We all go to the same ones, Atlanta, Orlando, Miami, stuff like that. You can tell real quick who the kids are. And usually the alphas will go to the front of the line too. The kids that keep going back to the front, that's something else we look. I hate the kid that's super talented that hangs out in the back. We write that stuff down. If you don't want to go out there and kick somebody's butt, you'd probably go down the list of the rankings. I mean, you've got to be the guy that goes out there and does it over and over, especially the guys that are ranked super high anyway, that already have 40, 50 offers, that go to events like Jeremiah Smith. We all joked about it. Like Jeremiah said nothing. He's super quiet, introverted kid, but he went to all the 7-on-7 events. Didn't say nothing unless you said something to him. The only time he spoke was when it was really bad, when some idiot would talk trash to him. I'll let you figure out how that ended every single time. So those kids that have that mentality, just shut up. I'm going to do what I do. You ain't going to do nothing about it. Those kind of kids, the way they carry themselves, the way they train, those are the things we look for. And it usually stands out. You don't have to look for it very long. The harder kids to scout are the 3-star guys that have fringe physical traits. Jeremiah Smith was 6'3", 210. And he ran like a deer. He ran like 23 mile an hour at Ohio State his freshman year. I mean, come on. You know what I mean? That's not hard to scout. Yeah. It's the kid that's the fringe player. It's a little short, maybe not quite as heavy as you'd like for a position. Maybe he's a 4'6" guy. Kyron Williams, a lot of people didn't think he'd ever play down at Notre Dame. He's obviously turned out okay. Everybody missed on that one.
Yeah.
Maybe the best running back in the NFL. He's certainly top 5. You know what I mean? It's just, so there are exceptions, but most of the time the measurables will lead you to the success.
And, I love that because honestly, it's a story that's well told, because of course you're going to obviously know like those high talented prospects that, right out the gate, what you're going to get. But then I think you said it perfectly, especially those ones that are just the right in-betweeners that we don't know if they will pan out or maybe they come in, right? And they go through camps, they go through OTAs and such, and then they become surprises in the, even in the NFL level. And I'm like, because I love, watching a lot of these guys that go undrafted, right? But then all of a sudden, they're bigger stories in the end if they just hit that factor, and so it's a great story, well telling, and so A final question, and it's more of a big one because covering the portal, the NIL, and the recruitment as itself, college sports is really changing. And I think a lot of that is because you're going to get players that are going to demand some money. Most of that is because depending on agency, depending on, some of these NIL sponsors and such, and usually a lot of these NIL sponsors, I'm sure you've seen them, they're mostly, very, very business, like they're business savvy. They know what they're going to do. But my thing is, when I look at the plethora of college football, to me, I love the sport, and I want to continue to see the sport be consistent with all these new additions, right? And so, to me, it's like you got to get a CEO in this building because at the end of the day, you're seeing programs get GMs now where they're really starting to handle up a lot of their money and then giving them a cap situation going in the near future. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but in the end, seeing this outlook, and we know that there's going to be repercussions, whether good or bad, but how we can make just college sports in general, because we know the NCAA, they're going to obviously have to figure this out one way or the other. But isn't it about that time where they really got to get a CEO in here, and the best fit of a CEO that can make that happen to make college football all the more enjoying for years to come?
Well, they're trying to do some of that. Like they've talked about having Saban and some of these other people, but that's this clearinghouse. I don't know how much you've looked into the house settlement. It's the most annoying thing. Like every deal over $600 has to go through the clearinghouse. I mean, look, if you try to tell rich people what to do with their money, they're just going to hide the money and send it to where they want to go anyway. That's not going to change. So recruits will just get paid like they used to with the McDonald's bags. But your overall theme with how things work, having Saban involved or somebody he's the easy pick would be great. Unfortunately, the NCAA doesn't have much teeth anymore, if any, and nobody fears them. So, even the state of Tennessee already filed before the house settlement, hey, anything that happens with that, it doesn't apply within the state of Tennessee. If that's not just saying we don't care what the NCAA or anybody else thinks, the government, I don't know what else does. So I don't know if you curtail this, but trying is all you can do because everybody wants to have an advantage on their rival. That's how the AD stays employed and making millions. And that's how even assistants, man, Jake, assistants are making millions of dollars now, not just the head coaches. So getting that one more recruit keeps you employed and changes your family's trajectory. So they're going to cheat like crazy. Good luck to whoever tries to take on that task that you're talking about. That's going to be hard.
Yeah. And you're going to have a strong mind from there. Like just that, because it's funny because I'd always thought that Nick Saban would be that guy, but a lot of people all backlash and think, well, he's just more SEC bias. And I'm like, come on, man. All he's trying to do is just make the sport in itself better. Now, I would agree to this and correct me on this, but you look at around the regions. You're right there and up and in the heart of the SEC where it's right all around in that area. Then you got the North, you got the West Coast, and then right down up in South where you got Texas and the Midwest, and then right up there into the Northeast. But if you had a chair and at least the best minds that have known that region for a very long time and what it looks for and how it works, and then you work with all amongst the states in the region, couldn't that be a possibility as well where you've got a whole big group and there's many talented minds that can maybe make up for one big impact and not only just in the football side, but even in just all college sports in general?
Well, if they had a committee of, say, 5 to 8 people or something, everybody gets represented in like regionally or something, that would be fine. But like, I don't know if you saw this, but the house settlement, the first lawsuit was thrown out. Not a surprise. Title IX. The words no athletic director ever wants to hear with the media or anything else. That makes them cringe and hide in a corner. So there's those kinds of things. And it's still going to end up being bureaucracy. But again, we need something that's a voice of reason. And even if you don't like Saban, if you follow college football, there's a pretty good chance you respect him. So if you put him on that, it'll probably go smoother till he didn't want to do it anymore. The guy's in his 70s now, But get somebody like that and a handful of other retired people. They're, assistant ADs, conference commissioners, business owners, whatever it may be. They need something because right now it is just dog eat dog, and they are trying to kill each other. All these schools are trying to steal players off each other's rosters. The reason there weren't spring games on ESPN like normal, literally, I had an SEC coach look me in the face and say, Brian, I don't want our game on TV because I don't want people trying to steal my players. We've got to figure out some things here. So maybe there is a way to do that. I don't know exactly how, but I'd like to have Saban involved. I know that.
Oh, 100%. Totally in agreement with it as well. Brian, appreciate you for coming on by, man, and expressing your insights up and on this, because this is a subject that we know that not a lot of people from outside looking in, they pay attention to a lot, but this is important stuff because it's like, we love the sports, especially college football, but it's so important to even just get the gist of what's happening behind closed doors. And, and especially too, from not even just in college sports, but even when you go into a lot of these political realms, and into some of these states like Tennessee and Georgia and multiple others, I mean, you're going to see a lot of those effects and repercussions one way or another. But appreciate you for coming on by, my friend, and where people can find you to get all of the information that you provide here for the Locked On the Portal.
The Portal Podcast, wherever you get your pods, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Podbean, we're there. You can find me on X at FBScout_Florida or at LO_the portal. We have something about recruiting or the transfer portal NIL constantly, and I'm on all the different social media platforms. So if you like recruiting, especially right now, the next 3 weeks is going to be recruiting Armageddon. So all the visits are lining up to all the commitments.
I don't know if you've heard of one name. There's one of them that I actually had the opportunity to interview, and he's still up in Red Oak, Texas. But he's a very good kid. Yes. Love the kid. Had him up and on a separate show up from here. But I think that kid, he's going to be pretty impactful. If you put him in the right places with the right minds, especially on the wide receiver room, man, I said this, and maybe I'm a little bit high on Cloud 9, but I think he could be another impactful Tyreek Hill. Speedster, good hands, and even a little working on the route tree, But that kid's going to be something in the near future.
I saw him in 8th grade, and I saw him at a 7-on-7 tournament. He was running by guys that were Power 4 going into their senior year. I'm like, who is that? Yeah, he's on his official visit to Notre Dame this weekend. He's got offers from everybody. Great player.
Yeah, I could see him. It screams SEC to me. It really, really does.
Big time player.
Oh, yeah. Appreciate you for coming on by, Brian. Enjoy the rest of the week and enjoy the weekend, my friend, and we'll see you soon. And yes, I'm definitely going to be active on these recruitments and all season long, especially with the transfer portal and such. Appreciate you for coming on by and bringing in the insights. We'll see you soon.
Take care.
Absolutely. There's Chase. Well, I'll tell you what.
Hey.
You sat back and you enjoyed the show, didn't you?
I did. I mean, when it comes to scouting players, like we talked about with the one guy that was on here before, I don't know if you remember who he was, but I kind of have a knack for, looking at talent when it bites me in the face, because I got laughed at when I was telling people that I think Brian Thomas Jr. was a better prospect and a better player than what Malik Neighbors was, and everybody looked at me thinking I was stupid, saying that Malik Neighbors should have won the Biletnikoff Award, should have been the first receiver drafted in that draft. And Brian Thomas comes out last year and shows up Malik Neighbors. Yeah, granted, Malik had a far worse QB and everything, but I feel like Brian also had more competition to work with, because he was fighting with targets with Evan Ingram, with Gabe Davis, with Christian Kirk and everything. So, Malik Neighbors was getting all of the targets and all the balls fed to him, and Brian Thomas still made himself look better. I was laughed at when I said that I would have taken Patrick Mahomes over Deshaun Watson back in 2017. Oh, yeah. And, telling me that I don't know how to evaluate talent. My buddy and Colin Cowherd and everybody was saying, slamming the table for Sam Darnold back in 2018. And I said Josh Allen all the way. And nobody even know who this kid was. I have a special knack for looking at talent when when nobody else thinks that they're going to be good. And, I was the person that was sitting back clamoring for Shedeur Sanders for this team while going through this process. And I also wanted Cam Ward, but I knew we weren't going to have him. So I said Shedeur was the next best thing. And look at him. We got him in the 5th round. So, people can mock me for my talent evaluations, but I've been right about 85% of the time.
I'm so happy, though. The fact that he already knew where I was going. Because, interviewing that kid, he's a great kid. Great mind. And like I told everybody, this kid could have a Tyreek Hill type of ceiling. Because Braden Robinson, he's from Red Oak, Texas. And he was like, I seen the kid in 8th grade. I already knew. I was like, that's funny because I already said that screams SEC in my mind. Because here's what's funny, right? And I think the closest thing that I think that we've gotten was in Alabama. Alabama's notorious for it because we've seen Jalen Waddle and we've also seen Henry Ruggs before the whole entire personal stuff. But
now we got Ryan Williams.
Yes, and so to me, the kid's a track and field, he's a track and field athlete, and the kid is just wildly fast. I could see him literally in 3 seconds just have perfect feet work, and then he's already past the corner within 3 seconds. The kid's just got such wild talent, and that's why I was like, I just put a smile on my face because of the fact of I cannot wait until this kid gets recruited. I'm waiting for the commitment, and the fact that Notre Dame, that's an interesting one. But I'll tell you what, though, if he ends up in an SEC school, I'm telling you, the SEC schools are going to honestly smile really hard. And the fact that I was able to
what's he
know the kid,
the 7 recruiting class or the 26?
26. He's right there.
So there is a possibility that Arch might stay for another year. So if he can go to Texas with Arch Manning.
Yeah, after Matthew Golden getting drafted, that's pretty good. And hell, even when they had Isaiah Bond.
Isaiah Bond has the chance to go back to college now that he was not drafted. So,
wow.
There's a chance. And there's also a chance that Shamar Stewart can go back and re-enter the draft for next year. He can't go back and play college, but he can re-enter the draft if he doesn't play.
So here's what's interesting about that. And it's funny you bring this up because we just seen all of the recent news surrounding Shamar Stewart because I just don't get it, Chase. I really don't understand with what Cincinnati is doing. I think Cincinnati's front office is just a mess from the top down. And I don't get it because Shamar Stewart, he's a highly talented edge rusher, and you have one, especially when you got him in Texas A&M. Okay, between Myles Garrett and what Shamar Stewart is honestly going to bring to the table, I don't think he's the same, but I do think their pedigree from Texas A&M has just been very good. But Cincinnati is just going about this so oddly and weirdly, and to me, it's like you don't have your rookie or your veteran pass rusher in Trey Hendrickson right now on the same level. And it's like, what are you doing? It doesn't make any sense. And I don't know, man. It makes me really critically think about their future because after they have signed Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, you would think they would have figured that out by now. But no, they're still in the same realm. I don't get it.
I know. It makes me question whether or not Mike Brown really wants to win because,
he's doing everything right.
Yeah. The thing is, Mike Brown's worried about not having enough money or not, if you build a good defense, that is the one thing that the Bengals are missing to make it to the Super Bowl again. Because Joe Burrow and that offense are good enough to make it. And here's the thing. You've got so many players that are available to change your defensive roster. You've got Jair Alexander, who is a free agent right now. Yep. You got Asante Samuel Jr., who is a free agent. Xavier Howard is a free agent. And if you could get Shamar Stewart and Trey Hendrickson signed, let's say you were able to get those two signed. Now you just got to go spend some money and get a Jair Alexander or Xavier Howard or Asante Samuel Jr. One of those guys, just one. It helps your secondary drastically. which is one thing that has been lackluster the past couple of years. You end up fixing your defensive line because you signed both of your edge rushers and everything. Now all you need to do is get a big guy to plug up the middle, and I think your defense is a lot better. It's 10 times better than what it has been. And, Mike Brown's like, oh, shit, now I'm poor. Well, how about this? We build this defense up. We make it to the Super Bowl. We win it. Boom, you get a lot more money that way.
Yeah. I don't know. There's just some organization.
It boggles my mind. And if Jeff Bezos really wants to buy an NFL or just a sports team in general, the Cincinnati Bengals would be a great one for him to buy, because not only are they along the lake with a great view and everything, he's got enough money to build his own stadium, like a brand new one there for the Bengals. Yep. He's got enough money to pay any player he wants, and he's got enough money to make any changes to that team he deems necessary.
And what's interesting about that is because the good thing of it is you have a franchise quarterback. Okay.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow, as long as you keep him happy, that's the one thing that will be the Achilles heel of your franchise. Because, like we said, lots of these franchises, only 65% of the league whiff on quarterbacks. They don't find their franchise quarterbacks until they actually find it, right? So it's like, if you're lucky enough, if you're a franchise and you find your franchise quarterback and you lower down the percentage than where it's at right now, boy, wouldn't the NFL just be ridiculously stacked? But sometimes it's not always how the cookie, really rolls. It's not always how it is. But yeah, there's just some of these ownerships. I mean, we were so critical of a couple of them. I mean, you've known this. People have been so critical about Jimmy Haslam and how they were going to do things with Cleveland. But you look
I'd
at
rather have an owner that spends his money and whiffs on players than an owner that would be so conservative with his money.
Yeah.
And so the ball, like the Denver ball hogs from the freaking Fairly Odd Parents, like my ball, like that type of money. Like, no, my money. No, I want it to be.
It's what was surprising, and I think because turning the new leaf, because I thought the same way about Dean Spanos of the Chargers, because the one thing of it is like you move the team out of San Diego, you're sharing a stadium with Stan Kroenke and company with the Rams, and he's now selling his shares to where you've got the owner of the Detroit Pistons, he's already got his percentage share, and he's looking for somebody to fill in the other void of the 8%. So now he only has 61%. What a change that is. But I think a lot of that is financial situations, and at the same time, just the roster construction and just the status of your franchise is really what's a difference maker. Because, I mean, for as long as Cleveland has been in the rut for so long, and then finally getting the talents and knacks, and then finally spending up and in the money, hopefully they can find the consistency of it. But a lot of other franchises, I mean, Detroit's been in this rut. Chicago for a long time has been stuck in the rut, and they've been kind of conservative with the McCaskies, but it's just sometimes you are with what your ownership is built. Yeah. I mean, what's to say? I mean, a great, a great institution like Dallas with Jerry Jones. I mean, people were thinking this ain't looking good, and then all of a sudden, you're stuck in that 30-year drought, but yet. Things may be changing from there.
If I had over $10 billion and I bought an NFL franchise for like $4 billion and everything, and I still had like $6 billion left, I'm like, listen, I am spending whatever money I need to get these players in here. I'm spending, the best money that I can to get the best GM available. If not, I'll make my own damn decisions. And I am going to make sure my team is successful, whether it be baseball, whether it be hockey, or whether it be football. I am going to purchase a team, and I am going to spend the money to make them successful, because I am not going to be like these Indians owners, these Rockies owners, these A's owners, these Bengals owners, to where they are too scared to lose their money and not make a profit than actually spend their money. I would rather spend my money and lose it due to either a risky decision that doesn't work out, or lose it to a, great decision and they get hurt or something, rather than not spending money and having the worst team in the league, or having a team that is good but not great. Because that is what the Bengals are. They are good because of Joe Burrow, because of Jamar Chase, because of maybe Zach Taylor. We don't know. But they are not great because they don't have the money to get the defense.
And think about it. How many times that franchise has been in the Super Bowl?
3 times, right?
Yeah. I mean, they went in a time in Joe Montana. And then, of course, you fast forward and you're here against the Rams.
Well, yeah, you had Boomer Esiason once, I think, or twice.
Yep.
And then now you had Joe Burrow. And, their problem back then was no offensive line. Yep. Well, what do? 3 years in a row, you get an offensive lineman in the draft. You try to build this offensive line from the ground up, and clearly it's not working. This is still a garbage offensive line. Yeah. And now you got arguably, like, the Bengals it gave me so many question marks in this draft. You got a guy who you got an edge rusher when your biggest issue was linebacker and secondary.
Yeah.
And so you get an edge rusher when you didn't need one. You had Trent Hendrickson.
Cut a linebacker.
Yeah, and you cut a linebacker. You had you had Jihad Campbell available. You had Jahdae Barron, the corner from Texas, available. You had Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia, who was available at that point in time. And you also had Jalen Walker, who was available. Not to mention, you still had some good defensive tackles available that you need to plug up that middle of the defense and get that run game stopped. And yet you still go after an edge rusher that had 1.5 sacks. Yes, he's got, like Brian said, he's got the wow factor, the traits that you're looking for. A guy that's got the speed, a guy that's got, the size, that's got the hands, that has the work ethic. Yep. But he's also had 3 years to try to hone his skills and hone his talents, and he has not shown it. You had way better guys. And I just think the Bengals front office, whoever is making those choices, is not making the right ones, because for 3 years in a row, you drafted offensive linemen. It's not working out. You still got a bad offensive line, and you had a draft class riddled with defensive talent, and you chose arguably the one that had the most positions in the draft in defensive end. There was more defensive ends available in this draft than there has been in the past. And you could have fixed your secondary, you could have fixed your linebackers, or you could have fixed your safeties, and you chose to go with an edge rusher. I'm sorry, but your defense deserves to be bad.
Yeah. That's the thing, is because it's funny because I remember listening to some conversations this morning where, where is your money going to honestly go when you're putting together an ideal NFL roster? Ultimately, it's 3 and 3 offensive players and 3 defensive players. Because the thing about it is you look at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is massively heavy on defense. Why? I don't understand that. That's the part where I can't take Pittsburgh.
They're trying to live in the Steel Curtain era where defense wins the championships and everything, and they're neglecting the offense, realizing that this is an offensive league. You've got to score on the offensive side of the ball in order to win games. Defense will only get you so far.
But this is the thing, though. You're watching Joe Burrow have a nearly MVP season last year. You're watching Lamar do Lamar things, and
you watch Josh Allen do what he does best.
Yes. So it's like there's some teams that get it and some that don't. And it's to me, could
you imagine if Joe Burrow had the Steelers defense?
Oh, that would be Super Bowl team. It would. It really would. You would have that over the top quarterback. Now, I do think having a weapon, especially, regardless of the character issues of DK Metcalf, there's your weapon. But you also got to have that left tackle. You got to have that protective blind side. Now we know that, Kansas City, they love their offensive line, especially with Creed Humphrey, even if you have that center right up from there. I mean, Chicago paid for center. We know Minnesota, they got themselves some interior guards, and then the Chargers even got interior guards as well. So it's like you're seeing how important that is to protect your franchise quarterbacks. But then at the same time, you've got to reward these quarterbacks, get them some weapons, get them at least a healthy run game, get something to at least get more than 25 points on the board. Because you're not scoring more than 25, those legitimately will be L's. And you're going to tire out and gash out your defense because you're heavily relying on them. That's why it's like you got to have a beautiful.
How many times did the Steelers score more than 25 points last year? I think it was like 5 times.
I think it was 5 times. I'm going to look up on the schedule, but yeah, I think you're right. There was about 5 times that they did, and it was driving me crazy because it was like that offense looked so stagnant. It was driving me crazy.
Yeah. So and you look at some of the teams that they've played at the beginning of the season, like the Chargers, scored 18 points. The Falcons scored I think 17. The Broncos scored 20 or 19 or something like that. Had they played these teams like the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Falcons later on in the season, the Steelers would have lost those 3 games easily.
Well, and this is what's crazy too, because you look at the heftiness in the back half of their schedule: Philadelphia, Baltimore, Kansas City, and Cincinnati. And it's like,
did they win any of those?
They lost all 4. They lost all 4 of those. That's why they went in so cold in the playoffs, because of that reason. Because you started to see, and now with Justin Fields, remember, because Atlanta, 18, Denver, 13, LA, 20, and then you lose to Dallas in a close one, 20-17. And then it's like you bring in Russell Wilson, and it's like 37 against the Jets, whatever. 26 against the Giants, meh. But then you play up against you win a game against Baltimore with 18 in week 11. That's why
you play the Jets and the Giants and you put up over 30 on them. Yeah, it's because it's the 2 worst teams in the league.
Here's what scares me. You know how many times they threw for under 200 yards?
7.
Yep. No, 8. 8 times they did that. From week 1 with Justin Fields. Because Fields, I mean, we all knew that he had a hard time stretching the field. And he was throwing for less than 200 4 times until you got to Russell Wilson. And he was throwing less than 200 5 times. And it's like...
It also cracks me up more because, the Steelers may have Aaron Rodgers, and they also got Will Howard to try to, learn under Aaron Rodgers and then probably start next year.
The thing is he's not thrown in the wool, so at least...
No, he's not. Yeah. But it also cracks me up because they need offensive firepower for Rodgers. Yeah, they got a younger running back in Caleb Johnson and got DK Metcalf, but you also traded away your number 2 option to the Dallas Cowboys, and it's hilarious. I'm like, dude, really? This would have been a great Steelers offense had you kept George Pickens there, but now you got to run with Calvin Austin as your number 2.
And people are looking at me sideways, thinking that George Pickens won't have a Cortland Sutton season. Mark my words, 65 catches, over 1,000 receiving yards, and scoring 7 times. I'm not over-exaggerating that. That is about as ideal that you could have for a trajectory next season. I'm serious. Because I just know with the maturity and relationship that he'll have with Dak, that's possible. And somebody's going to pay the money, whether it's Dallas or it's somebody else, because that will scream productivity. So I don't know. I don't know really how they're going to figure that out, but
I'm going to laugh. I'm going to laugh if this will actually be the first time that Tomlin has a losing season.
So on the conversation of this, because we know we're running up some minutes, but
Shedeur Sanders, and we both have been on this conversation a bunch of times. Boy, did he look good in camp, and he's continuing to look great in camp. And Cleveland is kind of in this position where we know Kevin Stefanski's trying to put together that scheme fit, where he knows he has a trustworthy veteran with Joe Flacco. I don't see Kenny Pickett really, making this through either. But then, of course, the talks with Dylan Gabriel. And a lot of people were like, well, Dylan Gabriel's a winning quarterback. I don't care. That stuff in college is already thrown out the window. I don't care. Mm-hmm. You got to look at the trajectory of a quarterback standalone. And Shedeur Sanders, I would not want to throw him into the Wolves. That's just me personally, because usually I let a quarterback bake from 6 to 8 weeks at best. And then I throw him out there because then it gives me a generalized idea where the future's headed. But Shedeur, wildly accurate, highly talented. And you just saw it right there up and on the field. He's passed more times, but he's also completed more times and has barely made any mistakes. So I think a lot of that is because it's just that confidence when you finally have a type of pro-ready offensive line compared to what he had in college, and that just gives you that extra confidence and boost. And I know the backlash of it all is because we know Jimmy Haslam is a bit incompetent because this is kind of his thing. He tried this with Johnny Manziel, tried this with Deshaun Watson, and he took a shot at Baker Mayfield. But it's like, this is notorious for someone like Shedeur Sanders. I just don't understand. We've already been past the reality check thing. That's already done. But let's focus on the quarterback. You can't tell me that that's not highly talented. Like, it is. You're seeing the completions. You're seeing the accurate throw. And he's moving around in the pocket like he's played this before.
And it's funny because you had a Super Bowl winning Pro Bowl left tackle on the show yesterday that even said between all four guys, he would like to have Joe Flacco start the season and Shedeur be the backup because he could, I didn't ask him.
It just makes sense.
I did not ask him hey, do you think, it should be Shedeur? He said himself, he could have chose Dylan Gabriel. He could have chose Kenny Pickett. Yeah. He chose Shedeur Sanders and Joe Flacco. And as a guy who has played with, rookie quarterbacks and veteran quarterbacks, he knows talent when he sees it because of playing the game for so many years that he did.
Yeah.
And he sees Shedeur's got the talent to do something special in this league. And if he's even if you got a Super Bowl winning left tackle and one of the better ones that has played is sitting here saying, I do believe that they should start Shedeur Sanders at some point, I'm going to take his word for it because, nobody knows better than a guy who's played in this league.
Yeah. And that's the thing is because that's a pro that knows right off the bat. Experiences, studying, you just kind of know what you're going to get. That's why it was that's what I'm saying. That just makes sense. And then at least that protects your franchise and what you're going to get in your near future for the next 2-3 years ahead. So
what he said here, from what it sounds like with what he was saying, he thinks that Shedeur could be the real deal.
Yeah. I mean, how can he not? That's why it's we've already got the reality check passed, but it's how could he not be that highly talented of a quarterback? I mean, come on. I mean, everybody knew. This is what's funny. This is why everybody is curious about what Michael Penix is going to do this upcoming season. Because I already knew right off the bat, that's NFL caliber stuff. The pocket presence, the awareness, and then the accuracy for a left-handed quarterback like that, even coming off of those ACLs. The guy's just that talented. We only got a 3-game sample, but this year now it's going to be a full season there. So Penix could be the real deal. That's why I'm I hope Atlanta, they figure that out and then they turn that into something here in the near future. Man, what a great week that we had. We were stacked upon interviews. It was just is such a wild week. But you know what, though? We got a little tribal. We had a lot of college football talk up and in here. And at least the good thing of it is because we know it's right around the corner. We can't wait for it to start anytime soon. But, you know, I just still think, I thought that was grade A stuff because the last interview guest, because it is important stuff with this transfer portal, NIL, recruiting, like, this is the stuff that's changing the atmosphere of just college football or college sports in general. And that's where a lot of these, you got to get everybody involved, not just the programs, but it's the states. Because especially a lot of these governing bodies, it makes a lasting impact. And everybody wants to know where that money's going to eventually go to. So, yeah, I thought that was insane. And, yeah, he's right. When you hear that article, ADs are running for the hills. They do not want to hear the article now.
No.
But yeah, it's such good stuff, man. But it's gonna be pretty interesting. But it's gonna be fun next week though, because we got more interviews up and around the corner. Another former pro talking a lot about the Buffalo Bills. And talking more offensive line, even from the guard standpoint. So that's coming up next week.
Good. I'll have questions ready for him then, too.
Yeah, right. See, we're already getting all the questions there. And we've just been firing. Like, we've just been one and on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. And we've just been outstanding with all of our interviewers this week. Next week is also going to be the same story. Appreciate everybody for stopping on by and tuning in with us all week long. It's going to be a fun week next week. Interesting stuff, but plenty of content around the corner here for all of you guys, getting you geared up for all of your sports and getting you closer into your favorite sports. And all you need to know with all your sports news by going to snakesportstalkshow.com online. Online website is out now, and also with all of our merchandise is included in all of our blogs. Send us in your reviews. Send us in and shout us out. We'd love to hear from all of you guys of the fan. For Chase and myself here on the show, appreciate all of you guys for being here with us all week long, and we'll see you guys next week on the edition of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.